Guess who gets the clap? Hold on. You know what? Sorry. Thank you for joining us on episode 80 of the Carmudgeon Show. My name is Derek Tam-Scott, and that is Jason Cammisa.
And
I did it.
Wow. Okay. This episode is about not bullshit. A small bit of bullshitting. We do a bit of bullshitting in this episode, but it is in large part about...
Shat this morning. It wasn't a bull.
Was it a bull? Did you shit a bull? About the bull market, Hagerty's discussion of...
Did you not realize I called you Jason Cammisa? There are no greater insults in the world. I described myself as a Derek Tam-Scott.
I missed that part. I was having a nap. I was so in shock about having not had to clap that I didn't know which way was up.
Sorry. I have to point that out because people will otherwise. So yes, we're talking about the Hagerty Bull Market.
Right. And a sort of discussion of the cars that have been identified for next year, that this year, that could potentially go up in market value. We are definitely not.
You are like one of those people who write 2022 for the next 7 months because you're like, yes. I keep forgetting it's a new year.
You know what? I don't have this problem anymore because I don't write anymore.
You don't like use calligraphy and like, dearest sir, to whom it may concern.
Instead of road raging, I actually write elaborate fountain pen letters and then ball them up and throw them at other motorists, telling them to politely go fuck off in very good fountain pen.
All the while driving, which brings us to the Volkswagen commercial that you showed me earlier.
The sign then drive.
Right. So
I thought this was an iconic ad, and you as a Volkswagen enthusiast, I thought would have seen this ad, but it's I don't know. We might get like a takedown notice if we put this up as an insert, but the sign then drive, where the people are trying to sign and drive at the same time and they're running over hapless cones and stuff like that. And then they're like, okay, maybe we should call it sign then drive.
Just sign and drive. Introducing the sign then drive year-end event. Even better.
Okay, so maybe you should pull over first before you write your calligraphy.
No, I can do both. It's in the interest of expediency of road raging.
Might I point out that the Hagerty Podcast Network is a service of Hagerty, which is
my insurance company.
Yeah. Shh. Be quiet.
Right.
All right. So, I hear a dog.
He's telling us that it's time to get this show on the road.
Bye. I mean, hello.
Hello and goodbye.
You say goodbye and I say hello?
Oh, I thought we weren't singing anymore, especially not for the first episode of the year. Okay, enjoy episode 80. I'll show you mine if you show me yours.
Sure.
What does it say?
Your place in life is the driver's seat. Buckle up.
Is that implying that
Panda
I'm
Express.
an unsafe driver?
How do you get the only car appropriate fortune cookie?
Say?
The excitement of new romance will lift your spirits. Panda Express. Does that mean I'm buying a new car?
New romance? Oh, are you?
I mean,
does it have 12 cylinders?
No, I can't afford that.
It's a lot of cylinders.
I know. It's a lot of gas. Also, I have too many cars. But what
is your ideal 12-cylinder car?
Probably a Ferrari 400, but I really want an E31 BMW 850 CSI, having never driven one. And now no way I can ever afford one.
Have you driven a CI? You have driven a CI.
I've driven multiple CIs and Is, both of which are the same thing. Never an 840, always an 850. And all automatics except for one that smoked very badly, or I would have bought it.
I've never driven an 8 Series.
No? So you've driven... I'm trying to think of what is as boring.
E32 740i.
Yeah, but that's better.
And E38 740i.
They both drive better than the 8 Series.
The E38 740i drives very nicely.
Give me a shorty sporty.
Yeah, that's what I had.
Wonderful. The 7 Series is... the 8 Series is unfortunately nowhere near as good. Steering's kind of dead. The V12 is both powerless and characterless. And the automatic, it was the first drive-by-wire car, and the automatic was, I think they forgot to connect the wire to the transmission because you're constantly fighting with it. You're like, you have 5 liters and 12 cylinders, and I'm foot on the floor, and we're not accelerating enough to keep up with the
You're
city
in
bus.
fourth grade.
Because
Gear.
Fourth grade. Yes, teacher. You're at 1100 RPM and it fucking flat out refuses to downshift. I don't like those cars with automatics, but the manual, I think, you can work around it. Put cams in it, headers, make it sound like a real V12 because they sound like nothing.
At that point, you may as well just buy. I mean, Ferrari 400s aren't that expensive to buy.
When you say not that expensive.
Well, compared to not that much more than an 850 CI manual.
But they're like 60 grand. You want to buy one? I'll go in with you half and half.
Oh, God.
Then
we only get 6 cylinders. You already have a 6-cylinder car.
Yeah, I have 2 6-cylinder. Hey,
now
I
is a
already
bad
have
time.
2
I can't buy any more cars.
Straight 6 BMWs, which means I have a V12 BMW if you put the 2 of them
you
next to each other.
You have to drive them simultaneously, one with each foot.
Well, each at 45. What's the degrees? Each at 30 degrees to one
You have to be cornering very aggressively.
That can be arranged. Well, that's an annoying way of... How do you get that? I'm very annoyed at your fortune cookie and mine it.
I think it means nothing. This is like astrology.
What do you mean astrology means nothing?
Okay, you're not one of those.
I'm a Libra, which means I'll kill you for insulting.
You're just justifying your murderous tendencies using external forces.
No. Homicidal tendencies are not a trademark of Libra. I'm fair. I'm just. I will weigh all decisions. What's your problem? Fucking
this
Aquarius.
Is bullshit.
You're an Aquarius, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
What are you?
It doesn't fucking matter. It means nothing. Let's have a real episode here.
Can you look up an astrology book and find a hyphen?
We're supposed to talk about the bullshit market.
It's not bullshit
the bull
market,
not the bullshit market.
Don't bite the hand that feeds you. This is Hagerty's podcast.
No, I'm saying that the bullshit market is astrology. The bull market is actual content about cars that are going up in value.
What if somebody said the most amazing car for a Capricorn is a...
And I would say they should...
It's a good thing
they don't know very much about cars.
I don't remember your birthday. Are you an Aries?
Jesus.
It's the beginning of the year, isn't it? Yes. I thought you were February. What's your birth month? Or are you afraid to say?
Febtober.
It's February, is it not?
It is.
So you're not an Aquarius?
It doesn't go the whole month. The transition occurs partway through the month.
At the 22nd, right. So when are you? Are you after the 20th? Anyway.
Why are we here?
We're here to discuss Hagerty Bull Market. And I got to tell you, I was so sick during that filming. I think I've said this.
You do sound a little congested.
Not now.
No, in the video.
No. Holy shit. What is with everyone being sick? I just got a text that my boss is sick again. He's not even unsick from the last sick.
Yes, and don't worry, there's going to be we are currently enjoying the hangover from everybody having gotten together for the holidays. Right, because everybody gets together in the holidays and spreads germs, and then everybody gets sick a week after the holidays. So that's fun.
I can't. I'm not going anywhere for Christmas. Santa Claus is not coming to visit me.
Not going? You mean you didn't go anywhere?
I didn't. January. That's January, yeah. Well, the good thing is all the pandemics ended at the end of 2022, and we're done now. Okay, welcome to the first episode of the Carmudgeon Show for 2023, where there are no more pandemics and no one's sick. And we're going to talk about both the bull market and the bull market UK. Right. Because I threw a newspaper at Henry Catchpole.
Yes, and it landed on his front stoop, and then it formed the backbone of his entire episode.
He might catch a pole, but he's not catching my newspaper.
Well, it's because you threw it from a moving Rivian.
No, the Rivian was stopped when I moved. That thing was so awesome. I should actually play sorry, Paolo. I'm going to have to play the clip of that. Because what I did was I floored it. So that Rivian was an R1S with 4 motors and mud tires.
Not a T?
No, it was an S. It was an SUV. And it lit up all 4 mud. Like every time you leave the line, it's 4-wheel burnout immediately. So it lights up all 4. I ABS to a stop. I look at the camera. I throw the newspaper. And that was a request from Henry and Glenn, his Anthony. And then I took off. And so it just lights them all 4 up again. But then if you keep watching the clip, I don't know, 8 seconds later, you hear me. I come to a stop, and then I have to make a U-turn in the track, and the track isn't really all that wide. So
that's not all in the bull market.
No, that got cut out. No. But it's just me coming back, like doing a U-turn to come back, and then you just hear the most violent, outrageous, what sounds like you're definitely hearing an accident, and the clip ends. So it's like, throw the thing, click.
Dude.
Yeah. It just sounded like an accident had just happened off camera. Like you're waiting for the flash and the smoke and the wheel to run through the frame, the tire to bounce through. So yeah, Hagerty's Bull Market. Interesting phenomenon, right? So the valuation team, I had nothing to do with any of this, with the
Except
selection.
for the whole video.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, so the cars that were selected
Correct.
as the bull market cars.
So this is basically the Hagerty valuation team, who literally do nothing but crunch numbers and whatever. They're looking for a bunch of markers that are present there.
Is this Mr. Wiley who's running this process?
Mr. Wiley's running the process.
Yes.
I think he does this particular process within, but it's his organization.
Right.
And they're looking for, apparently there are a number of chief markers that you can look for that indicate a potential, a looming rise in value. And so they sort of go through and they...
You'll have to tell us about the methodology of the study because I don't know diddly about it.
I'm not...
Oh, neither do you. Neither of us knows diddly about it.
They told me a bunch of different things. They're looking at, for example, interest among Gen XYZ, for example. They're looking at sell-through rates. They're looking at, just a ton of information gets fed into this algorithm. And it spits out a list of, I don't know, I think they had initially 20 or 30 cars in the list for the year. They work with the editorial team. So this isn't a ranking of like, these are the number 1 through 10 most.
No, they're
likely
just
cars.
vehicles
Yeah.
that are of exceptional interest, poised potentially for value increases.
Correct. And so they'll identify, more than 10. So the final list is 10 plus 1. So 10 in the US plus 1 motorcycle, and then UK did 10. Because their market is obviously a little bit different than ours. But they came up with...
Lord knows that Austin 7 values in the United States aren't, or are they?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to... Don't contradict
I just can't
Mr.
imagine...
Catchpole.
I can't imagine... Well, no, in the United States. I mean, I think that the market, there are idiosyncrasies here that just like international scouts here do things that they probably won't,
Right.
because there's one in the UK.
Well, so Henry said in his video that the Lotus Elise Series 2 values have already gone up considerably in the US, but hadn't yet in England. And I'm guessing that's just a supply and demand thing.
Certain things, I mean, also because the S2 here is a thing and the S1 is not, and there's probably something where people are like, oh, I must have the S1 because it's earlier and lighter and more visual. I don't know. It depends. It's a mixed bag about which one. You think the S1 is ugly?
Horrible.
You think the S2 is
better?
Better? Interesting.
You know what's interesting? I just had Thomas Ingelot, who is the CEO of Polestar. He personally delivered a car to my house not because I'm anything
for his
special.
general amusement.
Well, because he was driving by my town, and it was just easier for him to drop it off an Uber to the airport. And so they dropped it off. I had the Ferrari, the 308 GT4, in the garage, and together with the Lotus. He never looked at the Lotus and spent 40 minutes just drooling over every angle on the Ferrari. It's so interesting. The Lotus is just a non-event for design folk.
Yeah, it is designed by and for 14-year-olds, perhaps.
I don't know if I'd be that hard on it.
Well, it's very exaggerated and sort of alien and in high impact and very sort of space-aged looking. It's really designed for impact, and it doesn't have a lot of... Yeah, it's like a budget Lamborghini in terms of... It's like a lot of... You want it to look really like outrageous, right? It's designed for... Yeah, I think so. It's got all these vents and the bug-shaped eyes and stuff like that. And
I never thought about it that way. I always thought of it the other way, which is it's just sort of standard issue, nondescript, doesn't move the needle or raise the bar, sports car design, like supercar-y kind of design.
Yeah, but it's like sort of generic supercar,
Yeah.
I guess. We're both saying the same thing, actually.
Okay. Yeah, I just never thought of it as like anything sort of like purposefully...
But that's the purpose of a supercar, is to be like covered in vents and...
No spoilers on this and no real... I mean, the vents are all
very
functional.
obviously mid-engined, and it's got like scoops and all these shapes that are like unnecessarily crescent-shaped and stuff like that.
But not octagonally shaped, and then because then it would
be a Lamborghini.
Yeah. Interesting. Anyway, so yeah, they come up with a list, and then what it gets whittled down to the choices that they feel strongly about, the valuation team feels strongly about, but that editorial can find. Because if we're going to feature the cars for a photo shoot, we have to be able to get them.
Interesting.
And you can't have
That's
a mix.
like a little bit artificial, that part.
Well, hold on. But there's also that's not the primary. So primary consideration is, are these cars part of the initial bull market list that's been identified? Yes, all of them are. Then it becomes, is this the proper mix editorially? You can't do a bull market of all $30 million cars.
Yeah, or they're all mid-engined, exotic, manual transmission, naturally aspirated cars from 1993 to 1997.
Exactly. So you're choosing one that's representative, then that you can also get. Right?
Sure.
We got some cars that were pretty tough to get. I mean, we got a Murcielago LP640 manual.
Stick. Yeah.
Like, I didn't even know that existed.
Yes, they made stick shift SVs. I think they made like 6 of those or something.
That was, of all the cars, and we should probably just go over the list at some point, or maybe people should just watch the friggin' episode.
That is the point, isn't it?
Yeah, probably. Of all the cars that I drove, that was the biggest surprise. Because I've spent some time in Murcielagos, hated the paddle shift. The rest of the car was okay. It's a Lamborghini. It's outrageous, and it sort of defies criticism because it's so outrageous.
Did you spend much time on the street or track only?
Street only with the previous Mercedes. Yes. This was track only, and it was just for filming. Mother of God, that fucking shifter is perfect. The shifter's perfect. The clutch is perfect. The gas calibration is perfect. The thing handles like $1 million. I'm just very slight understeer, but loves to rotate under power. It was just magic. And it was everything I thought it wasn't.
As if they weren't going up in value enough already as identified by Hagerty before this.
Well, but they knew I was going to get in and just about this car. It's unbelievable. Light shifter. This is the part where I'm going to get myself in trouble. The difference between that thing and the Audi R8 V10 was quite stark because my expectations for Murcielago were tepid, and it was spectacular. It sounded amazing, especially outside. It was fast as fuck. I mean, it just did everything well. A little bit of understeer, you can get around it, versus the Audi, which was
an Audi.
That's a great way of putting it.
Next.
Yes, next. Okay. But that was the biggest surprise of them. I would pay $1 million for that car if I had $1 million. That's a car that I can really see. It looks promise a 10, and it gives you a 10.
Yeah, and it checks all of the boxes of things that people are sort of anxiously wringing their hands about causing appreciation right now. Natural aspiration, manual transmission, cylinder count that leads to noises that sound like sex.
Yeah, but so does the R8.
Yeah, that's true. The R8 has always left me a little bit lukewarm.
On the street, they leave me a little bit lukewarm.
I guess it makes me want to just drive it daily and grocery shop in it and just use the hell out of it as a sort of disposable device. It doesn't make me want to collect it. It's not
that's the thing. You know my theory about this. Like, cars that are wonderful to collect are terrible to live with.
Yes, of course.
It violates that. So of course I'm not going to like it. It's a good car.
Too NSXy.
Yeah. But the worst understeer I think I've ever felt in any car ever. And that could have been an alignment issue on that particular car. I don't remember them understeering. Actually, I remember them snap oversteering, the V10s. The V10s I always thought were uncontrollable. This one would not turn. Look, it's an alignment.
Did it have a roof?
It did. It was not on fire. We did not let the motherfucker burn. You know that song?
Yes, okay, yes. Good. That's the Lamborghini party trick anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Huh.
So
interesting.
You've driven Murcielagos?
Never.
Really? And you've not driven a Diablo either, we discussed.
No. I have driven a shitload of Countaches, quite a lot of Miras. I've driven several Aventadors.
Huh. This is very interesting.
Yeah, the middle ones I haven't driven.
You need to go do that, and then we can compare notes, because I do have notes from where I drove every one of them back to back, back in the day when the Aventador first came out. We're going to have to do an episode on that. Hurry up,
I've got to drive some automobiles.
First. How hard could it possibly be to find a Murcielago and a,
How indeed.
Diablo?
We can ask the general public about Murcielago driving experiences, since they seem to grow on trees and are easy to find.
You work at ISSIMI.
Yeah, I know.
Can't you just snap your fingers and have one appear?
We've never sold one.
Okay, so get in your Mura and drive to the address given in some ad somewhere and be like, I would like to test drive your car because I want to buy it. And you show up in a Mura. What are they going to say? No?
Hey, a shitty old car. He must not have any money. Too bad he can't afford a newer one.
Yeah. No, I like this car, but too much insurance is worth it too much. Yeah. So you've not driven this. We can't talk about that. But you have presumably driven Mercedes-McLaren SLR.
I have, yeah.
Tell me about this, because I have things to say.
It was, I didn't really care for it. I didn't particularly enjoy it. It's a slush box automatic. It's an engine that feels too similar to too many other engines that Mercedes sold at the same time.
Because it was exactly the same engine?
Yes, that's probably why.
I disagree with that, though.
That the engine doesn't feel...
First of all, I have a strange admission. This is the only 55 motored car I've ever driven.
You never drove an SL55?
No. Well, yes.
R230?
I've only driven the naturally aspirated 55 E55 car. I've never driven
You never drove an R230 SL55?
Somehow, no.
Or an E55? Nope. A 211 E55?
Nope. I started I did 43. Have I ever done a 36 or a 32? No. 55 naturally aspirated, 63 NA, and everything since. 35, 45, 63, 65.
4.0 turbocharged.
Right. But
63.
no, I've never. So this is my first experience with a 55 car. But I know that engine in naturally aspirated form because a friend of mine had an E55. And of course I had a C43 AMG, which is the same engine, smaller displacement. I have never felt a Mercedes V8 before. I've heard them and I felt their power.
Mean as 113K. Oh, vibration. Oh.
That's the coolest thing about the SLR. You get in
because it's a carbon.
Well, you get a carbon tub. So you get in, it's got the big sides and the fucking doors and whatever. And it's kind of, it's a cool experience. And then you look down and it's got the world's most ghetto. Is it a radio cover? I think it just says like McLaren SLR. It literally looks like something out of, I wouldn't insult JC Whitney this badly. It looks like something out of a Dodge Neon, like from JC Whitney. And then you hit the little button, which is the coolest thing on the top of the shifter.
You have to flip the cap up.
Doink. It's like flipping a bic, and then the fucking motor vibrates the whole car in all of the right ways. Why did no one tell me that's a thing? That thing's alive.
What?
That's all you have to say for yourself is
I didn't find it. I mean, this is again the issue of how are you calibrated. If you're calibrated to a Countach, then it's not that vibration-y.
I disagree. I was there with a Murcielago, which is basically a Countach, and V12s are smooth. V8s are not. This thing buzzed and fizzed and.
I didn't find it that interesting. The car feels very big and unwieldy, also, and the transmission is dim-witted.
Okay, so what you're not seeing here and what you're not comprehending is that I'm trying to be nice and I'm looking at the one positive about that car. Because it looks like an Acura 2.2 CL from the back and it looks like an SL from the front and it's got that crap interior and
it's got a very long hood.
I hate cars where you sit on the back axle. Here's the thing. This bull market, I feel bad about.
I like the seats a lot too. I think the seats are nice.
Paolo with the friggin' Rona over there sneezing again. I didn't like the car.
Yeah, I don't like the car.
I have never felt a car that had steering this heavy when, like, you cannot turn the steering wheel when you're at idle, when you're not moving. It feels unassisted. And to me, the whole car struck me as the worst of McLaren meets the worst of Mercedes, not the best of either company.
It is a car that feels like an assemblage of parts rather than a coherent whole. There's something discordant about the way the car operates because it's kind of exotic-y in some ways and very not in other ways. It's very like
the radio cover flap thing.
Yeah, and the transmission's responsiveness is...
Back in the day, that had to be pretty good, right? So it's a 5-speed automatic. It's not a 7. The ratio spread is huge. So you get like a 6,000 RPM shift to drops to like 2,000 in the next gear.
It's supercharged. You can get away with that.
Yeah. Well, it's fast.
It's so quintessentially automatic. In a car where you have this expectation with a carbon chassis and it's very exotic and the way the doors open, you have this exotic experience, and then it's so obviously a slush box. To me, I found that characteristic to be discontinuous.
Okay. I can see that.
In any case, I remember the first time I drove one of those, I was a little bit disappointed. And then, like, the first time I drove a Carrera GT, it was the opposite. I liked it better after I drove it.
Carrera GT is a driver's car in a way that SLR just isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, you can really... when I was doing some research on that, I was going to do a Revelations episode about the car, but I kind of didn't.
About the SLR?
About SLR. I didn't because there wasn't a lot really nice to say. And a lot of the players will never speak on record to tell me what really happens. But it was very clear that Mercedes wanted to do a front-engine car. Gordon Murray at McLaren wanted to do a mid-engine car. And the way that went down was that Mercedes very passive-aggressively showed a show car called the SLR Vision, and it was a front-engine car, and that was it. Once that was done, there was no more discussion. It had to be a front-engine car. And he moved the engine back by 3 feet. feet to get that thing to turn. But it wound up being a 3,800 pound carbon tubbed car. I mean, it just kind of not a real
anti-McLaren F1.
Right. I mean, Gordon Murray and McLaren got that job because of what they did with the McLaren F1, and the Mercedes sort of beat them down into doing things the Mercedes way, which didn't.
Well, that is exactly the brilliance of the McLaren F1, is that it's so single-minded and so focused and so much the expression of a single unified vision. And the SLR is kind of the opposite.
Yeah.
But
cool. I mean, look, cool car.
It is
not
cool.
for a driver.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a. The McLaren F1 puts at its central purpose the driving, and the SLR does not do that. It excels in other respects.
Right.
And if you are someone who values those things, then it is a good choice for you.
Brutally fast. I mean, it left the Lambo fairly well for dead.
It's
and
torque.
drivers. Yeah. Nice, really high-speed cruiser too. I'm sure it's wonderful there. And 25-year warranty on the brakes.
Yeah, that SBC thing.
Yeah.
Like your E500 or any other Mercedes from that era.
Writing the script for Bull Market, that was a little bit of a tough one because that's just not, the car had a tumultuous gestation period.
It is very internally combustioned. That is one thing you could say about that car. Yeah. It is an interesting thing as it ages because it is something you would never see today.
Is that? I mean, I kind of feel like it's just very modern car in the way that like it's supposed to be light, but it's actually very heavy, and it's.
I just mean that now with where hybridization and electrification, it's just like a sort of big honking torquey V8 thing with a slush box automatic. There's not going to be stuff like that made anymore.
I mean, I just had a Cadillac Escalade V. That describes
slightly different.
Yeah, slightly different. No. Look, if you're not the type of a limit sports car driver, I think that's a really cool statement.
I mean, and it is certainly rare, but not for me. It's not my jam.
Next up that we covered, have you ever driven a Hummer H1?
No.
That was horrifying.
Very alarming.
Well, because
Randy almost capsize you in it or something like that?
There's a lot of editing going in there to stop because I was screaming. I did not do well in that segment. In fact, the B-roll segment, I did not get in the car. I wouldn't do it. First of all, I was sick as shit, that whole production. But Randy saw red and
is just sending it in an H1.
Holy shit. I mean, there's a 300-foot drop on one side of the road, and we were literally opposite lock into the dirt right to the. I mean, he was just. I've never seen.
Was
Randy
he amused?
Could not stop screaming, laughing, and I'm screaming like, "Stop it! Slow down!
We're gonna die!"
That line about like Randy, this thing didn't even have to pass rollover standards. There was no airbags in it. There was no safety requirements. He's like, "Really?" And I'm like, "Slow the fuck down!" And
so Randy liked the H1.
Randy had a riot in it. Yeah, no, it was fun. I mean, I actually loved it. As soon as I got in it, I'm like, "This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever been in." Like, you literally can't reach the passenger, not even close.
Well, and there's something immensely charming about that. We talk about this at length, about how bad things are good or interesting. I mean, it's what gives things character, and certainly it excels at that. And it's just a particular moment in time where you're like, yeah, here's this thing we made it to like run over camels in the desert or whatever it is that we designed it for. And like, I guess we could sell it to the public. It's like a bit coarse, but I'm sure people will pay money for it. And then the governor made it happen.
Yeah.
And it became a status symbol. So, I mean, it is such an extraordinary story, and it's such a singular, unrepeatable, nothing else like it kind of experience that it makes sense.
I want to drive that LMO too. I was going to say, give me a Lamu 2 together with that Hummer H1. That would be like the perfect two-car solution if you're like...
own an oil well.
Yeah. It's like an
and
oil
have
baron,
a lot of like lower income people to. I mean, have you seen the videos of them driving around in those things in Baghdad?
No.
They just, if there's a car, like trying to drive around the city streets, they just drive into the back of whatever car is in front of them. And then they're like, oh, let me get out of your way because I've driven into the back of you. It's no wonder Americans are widely hated around the world. They literally would drive into the locals. And
this is Hummers or
Humvees.
Okay.
Humvees.
Right.
Yes. But I guess that's the way you'd go and not get stuck and get, roadside bombed.
I mean,
that's
apparently exactly why I want a Lamu 2.
So you can
run into the Priuses on the road
who are occupying the left lane.
I mean, if I remember correctly, 7,716 pounds with a full tank of gas. Sign me the fuck up.
Well, the full tank of gas is 7,000 of those pounds. I mean,
and it only lasts
have
10
like
miles.
a 65-gallon fuel tank or something absurd like that.
Yeah. It needs it.
Yes. So no, I've never driven one, but I can see the appeal.
Yeah. It's an American LMO too.
Yeah.
In all the right ways. This one was a diesel.
Was it an Alpha? Was it a 195 horsepower diesel or a 300 horsepower diesel?
I think it was 195. It was not that slow.
Then it might have been a 300 horsepower one.
It wasn't painfully slow. It moved.
Yeah, then it must be the 300.
You'd think I'd know this, but I was in and out of so many cars.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to do video. You normally
I was
do a video about like
a car,
right?
This
is like, let me tell the story of 11 cars at once. Sorry,
10
cars on a motorcycle.
Plus sleeping in between takes. I mean, I was that one of those, like, all right, I'm going to go out, sleep. Okay. Let's talk about Saab 900 Turbo. This is an interesting one.
Yesterday I drove a Saab 900 SPG, the first Saab 900 I've ever driven.
Okay. Well, tell us all about the hurdy-gurdy.
It's really charming, actually. I quite liked it. This one had 256,000 miles on it. And
on the original turbo, of course.
Yes, they're always on fire, aren't they?
Oh, my mom's 81 900 turbo. I think it was about every 18 months on average, blue turbo. But anyway, that was early.
I quite liked it. I found it charming. It was interesting. It has this noise that's very distinctive, and I hadn't heard the noise. It's like a very throaty inline four noise, which is not something you usually hear with this side of a Alpha 4C or an Abarth, but usually,
almost like Darth Vader meets like burping through a toilet paper roll. Sort of.
Yeah, it's this very unique noise. The whole car is really charming. If you are buying, and so this is something that I talk about when you buy an old car and you're like, I bought an old, I don't know, BMW 7 Series or Mercedes S-Class or whatever, and you're just like, it's like a regular car that functions well and it's like a decent car. And you're like, if you're buying a classic car, you kind of want an element of weirdness and character and just strange experiences. And that, as much as I've liked those cars as, an old S-Class, but for me, it's not the first vintage car I would buy because it's too
normal, right?
Yeah. And so the Saab is great because it's not that, well, one did sell for $55,000 on Bring a Trailer, an SPG.
Holy shit.
And, so
everything is wrong on those cars.
Everything is weird. Everything is unique. The more you look at it, you're just like, this is so weird. This is the reason why I, for example, bought a Citroen. You just, for dollar per weirdness or dollar per just the density of what the fuck, the number of times you say what the fuck when you interact with the car for the first time, I want that to be a large number because it's an interesting experience. That's the purpose of buying something that's not a modern appliance. And the 900 is really good at that.
Delivers by the boatload.
The position of the ignition key, of course, between the seats, people always talk about that. The fact that you can't get the key out unless it's in reverse. Which nobody knows who's never been in one or had a deeply traumatic experience. The wraparound
windshield.
The wraparound windshield and the way the wipers function, the cutaway of the doors, the lower part of the doors.
So you don't get snow on your pants. That's why. So that's the sill moves away with the door.
Yeah, the sill is part of the door, and so you're just like, wow, a lot of the car's missing when the door's open.
Yeah, but what was also missing would be the snow that would be stuck there that wouldn't get on your pants. Right. The driver only.
Seated heat, yes, which was weird. And then you open the hood and you're like, it's backwards and it's upside down. And why is the air conditioning compressor on the firewall? Yeah. And, it's just a really extraordinary experience. And then the driving experience is relatively normal, but it's still interesting and charming. I mean, it's really pretty out there.
On the sort of sport versus luxury spectrum, where did you put that?
It was pouring. And I
oil out the bottom.
No, raining, and I spent 5 minutes in it, so I didn't really have a good. Mostly, I was deafened by the noise of the hatch and miscellaneous climb. I mean, 256. The car looks quite nice, but 256,000 miles.
They were not clattery when they were new.
Yeah, and so I think I was sort of distracted by that. It's not a super sporty car.
It was the reason I ask is because
it's not a GTI.
No.
It's very much not a GTI.
Randy and I were debating in the car. So he didn't drive that Saab 9. This is Randy Popes in the video. He's never driven a 900 turbo. And so that segment I had written, I drive, and we just didn't get a chance to get him into the car to drive it. But I said, like, this is not a sporty car at all. And he was like, wait a second, Jason, what are you talking about? These were very sporty. And I'm like, there's nothing sporty about them. They're much closer to Mercedes than they are BMW in terms of driving experience. There's a lot of body roll. They're very soft. They're fast as fuck in a straight line, especially the later cars. But they're wonderful, quiet, refined cruisers. And he was like, that's not what I heard in the day. And that's what, there's one scene in the thing where you see, I flick the car into a corner and we sort of get rotating. He's like, wow, that's a lot of body roll. That wasn't in the script. And I hustled it around.
Was that him saying, I think you're going to capsize this?
Yeah. Well, we came around one of the corners. It was a right-hand bend onto the front straight on 3 wheels. And he was like, I think we're on 3 wheels. That's all cut out. But I'm like, there's nothing sporty about this car, but that's not what they did. The whole idea, the thing that I find most interesting about the 99 turbo and the 900 turbo, and 99 turbo wound up on the UK bull market list this year. The same effective car. The 900 turbo is a wheelbase stretch. The wheels went further forward to make more crash space. But what I found interesting about them is they were the first regular production turbo car, other than like 2002 turbo and 930 turbos. But it was the first turbo that was not.
And don't forget the
Oldsmobile Jetfire,
yes.
and the Corvair turbo, which beat it by 3 weeks or some crazy shit.
Yes, the Monza.
But this was the first turbo that was not done for performance. This was done for economy. And so Saab's deal was a relatively small turbo for quick response, but not a lot of high RPM power. So if you look in terms of top speed, the 900 turbos were not really any quicker than the 900 16 valves. Especially later on, it was the difference in acceleration and torque that was huge. And the idea was quiet, smooth torque, which is what we all love today in cars. This is what customers
very prescient.
Love. Yeah. So really cool car.
Yes, immensely charming. A lot of character, especially per dollar.
Mm-hmm. Have you driven a Cappuccino?
Nope.
So this was interesting because this was the day that I was really sick. So I was not enjoying life. But the only other Cappuccino that I had driven was quite track prepped. This one was much more stock, and I didn't enjoy it at all.
You didn't enjoy either of them, right?
Correct. The one here, the one that I drove here in the Revelations episode, was just too harsh. I thought for me, it was unbelievably grippy and composed, but just not. I thought I'd rather be in a Miata. This other one I got in, and it's an acoustic non-event. I mean, you literally can't even hear the engine. 9,000 RPM turbo. Come on, like I want to hear. You expect
turbo noises
and everything noises. None of it. But this one, I really realized why it's a journalist special, because at the limit, it's perfect. I mean, it was just neutral and just it just became a wonderful driver's car. But it's not a light your hair on the fire event the way I sort of expected it to be. So I learned,
especially compared to other K cars.
Well, the Beat. I mean, the Beat is I'm glad it's the one that I bought. I made the right choice for me, right? I'm a limit guy, and that I don't. All of my mid-engine cars never get driven to the limit. Mid-engine cars are not around limit, but that's just a light your hair on fire in normal traffic, just doing normal stuff. And then there was the 350Z and Corvette Z06, which was and the AMC AMX. I never even sat in the AMX. Too sick. Randy had to do that. Have you driven one?
Never driven one.
Apparently quick, 7 seconds to 60 back in the day. But the 350Z and Z06.
How does that relate to the Javelin?
It is a coupe version of the Javelin. So same basic architecture, but it's a 2-door shortened version of the Javelin. So the same, 396 is the big motor. There's some enormous.
We are thoroughly outside of my area of expertise. I do know the Javelin was run in Trans Am.
Okay. So
that's the extent of my knowledge.
Okay, that's more than I knew. Anyway, Javelin has an AMC badge on. There's my knowledge. 350Z was cool because we got a Nismo. That's a rare car. And that was pretty damn good. I mean, that was a 200,000 mile car, and looked quite good. I mean, some tears in the seat, if I remember correctly, but, we were not really supposed to drive these cars in anger. I think that what was sold to the owners of the car was a little bit different than what we needed to do for filming, and that was a miscommunication. This is the first year that we've done it. But you can't do all these sports cars without really showing what they did. So
sporting intent.
First thing I did was slide that thing ass first around a couple corners with Randy behind me, like pacing me in the Z06, which was on like ancient tires. And there's one line in the video that makes me laugh because I wrote the script and he's delivering and he goes, "This thing really grips," because it was like a skid pad, like it was like a G or 1.3 or something.
When nothing else was.
He says that and fucking when he was in car filming, he's in like fourth gear at like 2,000 RPM and almost loops the fucking thing because he goes to the gas and says, "Whoa, what the fuck?" The owner,
it has ancient tires.
Ancient, I mean 20 something year. Like I think they were the original tires on the car. But what a wonderful thing to watch ballet itself around track. I know what they were like in the day. They were spectacular, and so we can all look past a set of tires.
Right.
But it was real fun to drift the Z around and have Randy come and say, "I can't keep up with you, Cammisa. You need to slow down." Love that. Words that resonate.
If you handicap him enough, yeah.
But that Z was pretty damn good.
Interesting. Everyone always derides those cars for having been heavy and sort of like a bit of a special for boy racers, but not actually a car that delivers in the sports car sense.
I would have been part of that crew deriding it. I mean, I don't like V6s, first of all, and I thought it was always a little bit too heavy for its size. But you know,
how heavy is too heavy? Does it weighs the same as a V8 Vantage?
33, yeah, but it's tiny.
33.
33,
are they that light? So it's like quite a bit less than a V8 Vantage.
I got bitch slapped on Instagram. I called it a fat pig, like 3,700 pound fat pig or something, and somebody screamed at me in the comments like, "You don't know what the fuck you're talking about." And that was in fact the weight for the Cabrio that I had committed to memory 15 years ago. They're not as heavy as I remember them being. Still a little bit too heavy, I think, for what they were. But this was Nismo, right? So this one had
also
the
compared
limited
to
slip.
the 300ZX Turbo before it, which was also kind of a porker,
right?
An actual porker.
Actual porker. They were. Oh, now somebody's going to say, "Oh, they only were 2,900 pounds." Here's the joke.
No.
The Scirocco 16 valve, of course, I have to put it in Scirocco terms, was blasted for being ridiculously heavy. The US spec car with air conditioning and power windows was 2,380. So it's all perspective, right? I'm not, anything 2,380 today. That's Miata, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, GT3 is probably 31.
Right. I mean, there are very few cars you can get under 3,000 pounds at this point.
It's always amazing also when you look at old like economy cars and you're like, this Corolla is kind of heavy. It's 2,700 pounds or something like that.
23. Camry. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, weights have gone crazy. It was neat. It was really neat watching Randy Popes drive that Harley. So that thing was like fresh out of restoration 2 years ago, I think a year or two ago, completed restoration, and it had gone 6 miles. And man, did that thing need a shakedown.
Yes.
And we gave it to it. I mean, it broke constantly, but we fixed it all. It was all so simple that we would just be able to pull over and fix whatever broke. And by the end, it was perfect. And to think that was a 1937 motorcycle.
Really?
37. That's
Holy
an
hell.
old friggin' thing. And once there was a charging system issue. There were a couple little issues that we sorted out. It worked. It kept up with the camera car. I mean, it just kind of did that was so cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I would have looked at that bike and thought 70s, not 30s.
I don't think I've ever ridden a motorcycle. I've never ridden a carbureted motorcycle. I don't have a lot of motorcycle experience.
Wow. Hold on. Says the man who dailies a motorcycle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a lot of motorcycles. You mean?
Well,
I don't
have a lot of breadth. Like almost all of my motorcycle experience is Italian.
Interesting. Yeah, that was kind of cool. Sounds just like today's Harleys. Like it was just wild to see.
Today's Harleys sound just like it.
Yeah, fair point. Did you watch the Bull Market UK thing?
I did. It was interesting to see a different perspective on the market is obviously quite different in the United Kingdom. And so it's interesting to see that parsed and put in such stark terms because we're looking at exact same mission at exactly the same moment, but in two different places.
I mean, to me, the funniest thing was the intro, and mine was like all just bang carve, sideways.
Cinematic.
And then Henry comes in.
It's like Michael Bay.
Yeah, and then he comes in and he's just reading a newspaper and having a lovely tea. And
he's purposely trying to play up Britishness.
I don't know.
Was that intentional?
I would assume so.
Does he know?
Here's the thing: I don't think I've ever met Mr. Catchpole in person, which we got to fix this year. But he's so my opposite. Like I love that he's on the Hagerty channel because we see the world he's so
Do you
calm
see
and
the world very
introspective.
differently though?
I don't think we do.
Or do you execute differently?
No, because I mean, my favorite video that he ever did was this. It was an ode to the love of manual transmissions. We see the world the same way.
Yes, you just deliver your perspective.
His
very
style
differently.
is so relaxing and so slow and well thought out. And mine is like flash, bam, in your face, high energy. I love that he did that intro because it's, I literally come to a screeching halt in an R1S, throw a newspaper, a camera, and take off. And he's like, I'm just going to get up.
And
from
so
my
he
tea.
specifically requested that to draw contrast.
No, he did. The theme of the episode was supposed to be. I don't know what happened. I probably shouldn't even say this, but the original plan was that there were the intros from one car to the next was always a newspaper landing somewhere, and they must have just had that plan and it didn't work. So they asked me for a scene where I just threw a newspaper, and I thought, well, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to screech to a halt, throw a newspaper like I'm angry, and then haul ass out of there. And then we did another one where I was in the car and I pulled the sun visor open and it fell in my lap, and I'm like, the fuck is this? Threw it out of the way. But they only obviously needed the one. But it works perfectly to, here's a car making a lot of noise. Oh, and here's classical music in a moldy brick house with a moldy British man reading a newspaper.
It's just reinforcing stereotypes.
Well, but they're true. So I was looking at the list of cars in there and realizing I've only driven 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Not all that many of them, but we each own one of the cars on the list.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mercedes R129 500 SL. I do own that.
You do.
And
then I have the Elise.
The Elise. You have the Elise.
But that is a quite interesting. Funny enough, the day that the U.S. bull market came out, a friend of ours who has a Ferrari 400 and just a really great bunch of cars and a Bentley Turbo R said,
which is on the list in the UK.
Well, and I didn't know this. I didn't see the list until the video came out because I just didn't have a chance to look. And so, but his comment was, "Great video. You're missing a Bentley Turbo R." And now I'm going to have to text him and before he listens to this episode and be like, "I knew that was in there, and that's why I purposefully left it out."
Yes.
But it's not the case.
I mean, so I adore the Bentley Turbo R. It's one of my favorite cars. I really would like to own one someday.
Ever work on one?
Nope.
Don't.
I know.
Tears.
I know they're bad. I know they're really, really bad.
Tears. I mean, I had a friend of mine who was a BMW tech, who was the foreman at the local dealership, and he bought one. He once pulled an all-nighter and called me in almost tears the next morning and was like, "I need your help now. Can you please come here? I got to get this car back together." And it was just a suspension bushing. He'd done
on his own car.
On his own car, yeah. And he was just trapped. Couldn't leave. Couldn't get the car back together. He was bleeding. He was cut up. He was like, I can't get to any of these fucking nuts. It was just, they're nightmares to work on. But so wonderful. Fast as fuck.
Yeah. Huge torque.
Yeah.
They're really a pleasure to drive.
Yeah, they're great. And this friend of ours took one on a rally.
Yeah.
I love that. And it survived. It didn't get hot. It didn't break. He just had a wonderful time.
I think they'd suffer from sititis.
Yeah.
A lot of them are
I think everyone's afraid to drive them. I mean, who bought that car to daily sit in traffic?
A superior sort of human.
Somebody with a lot more money.
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I was happy to see the 99 Turbo on that list because that's a car I've never driven and I've wanted to. Mm-hmm. And then there was Fiesta Mark 1 I've never driven.
No, it's never something that did we even get those here? We might have. They might have brought them over to the US, actually. I think they did.
Of course they did not. Paolo can cut out the not if they didn't. Editing, fix it in post. Just kidding. They can know I'm an idiot.
I think that car was iconic in a way that it just wasn't here, right? There is a fondness for small cars with character in the UK and Europe generally that we just do not share. It was, as you describe, a penalty box here. It was the start of the oil crisis here, and it was counter to everything that Americans truly wanted, but we tolerated them for circumstantial reasons that were really culturally divergent, and those things had become sort of accepted in the United Kingdom for much longer. I mean, also on the list is the Austin 7. Again, a small car that mobilized people in a way who would have not otherwise had personal mobility, and so it isn't a cultural icon. And I've talked at length before about how the Austin 7 is a car that mobilized an entire generation or nation, and how every country needs at least one of those types of cars. And so the Austin 7 makes sense in that way. It's funny, you can watch him struggling with characteristics of the car which are foreign to today's operators, shall we say.
Yeah, like brakes that only actuate on the rear unless you pull a lever up front.
Yes.
That's so crazy.
It's like a bicycle, independent. Is that right on a bicycle? Yes. Yeah. Motorcycles are like that. I can't remember whether the front and rear brakes are controlled.
You do ride a bicycle also.
I do, yes. I just can't remember what all the levers do. And
the left hand is front. No, the left hand is front, right hand is rear on a bicycle.
Oh, on a motorcycle, the right hand's the front and the left hand's the clutch.
And your right foot is the brake.
Yes.
Rear brake.
The rear brake, unless it's a old Italian bike, in which case the shifter's on the right and the brakes on the left, and you push down instead of up to shift up.
Holy shit. I would lock up the rear wheels every time I tried to shift.
Yes.
Yeah, no thanks.
And you'd also shift up when you meant to shift down.
Oh, God. Yeah, no thanks. That's blowing the motor.
I really appreciated the presence of the Citroen BX.
I saw your excitement when you just looked down at the page and were like, yeah, I get to talk about it. Here's the thing. I love that you're a Citroen owner, but I've not seen the car.
I know. We'll have to get you a seat time in the Citroen, but the BX is a pretty cool car. I mean, it's a folded paper Gandini design, and the thing that I really like that Citroen did, and then, so they... Let's see, we'll go to like the 1970s. They had two cars. They had the big car and the small car. The big car was the DS. And the small car was the Deux Chevaux. So it's like there seems to be a gap in our product offering. So we'll offer another car, which is the GS. And the GS was meant to... it was kind of efficiency. It's like 1100 cc's, but like delivers medium-sized car performance through clever design. And so but it still has the suspension, the same suspension as the DS. And so you get like this weird mixture of like expensive engineering and like economy car characteristics. And the BX replaced the GS, doing effectively the same thing. And it's got lots of weird Citroen character and the folded paper design done by Gandini. And they made a Group B rally car version of it, and it has the same suspension. And you're just like, this thing is cheap as shit now as a collector car and wildly interesting. I think the same value proposition is similar to the Saab 900, which is if you're going to spend money for your second car, it's your first non-functional, get me to places forward focus type of car. And you could either buy like a BMW 3 Series, which is like fun to drive at the limit, but very familiar as a car, or you could get this weird experience that you get in a Saab 900 or a Citroen, for $5,000. You're like, it's a pretty interesting way to spend $5,000 on a car. So I'm a fan of that. Obviously.
I've never driven one, but I mean, I know what that suspension's like. It's unbelievable.
It's just weird. If you want like a different experience for not much money, then it's hard to argue with that. Of course, it's not going to function probably sometime. Although they're kicking around with 200,000 miles on them. So
that's cool.
So that's cool the BX. List. But that would never in the United States. I mean, I don't know if there's any. Is there a BX in the United States?
You should buy one and bring one over.
Yeah, I know. I actually have seen a BX. I've seen at least two BXs in the United States, but they were both the Group B cars where they're like $100,000 because it's a Group B homologated rally car.
Given that car is now in the Hagerty Bull Market, before the market finds out about this, you could go and get one and ship it here.
Yeah, they're like free in the UK. They're like literally I think they're 5,000 pounds.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a hell of a visual statement to make for 5,000 pounds.
Yeah, and experience too. You get in it and everyone's like, what is this weird car? Everything's weird. The steering wheel is weird. This is weird. There's nothing that's not weird about it.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
TT, I have never interacted.
I mean, I thought the funniest part of that video was that Henry's like, there's absolutely no reason to drive a Mark IV Golf. Next.
I think the Mark IV Golf's not unpleasant.
I don't think so at all. I mean, you get an R32, they're quite good. I mean, the Mark IV was
a TT. I mean, here's the thing: the TT has that problem that you hate.
Yeah, meaning Audi takes a good car and gets rid of all the really good chassis tuning.
No, okay, that wasn't where I was going. But the TT is a design icon, and I think that Henry's point there is that it is such a visually impactful car that's where all the meat of the consumption of that car lies, is the design of the interior and exterior. And so dynamically, it's immaterial because it writes a check, which is visual stunningness, and the driving experience does not match that. It's not a transcendent driving experience, but is a transcendent design experience.
It did also, at the end, have a 3.2 liter VR6, and I believe was it the first dual clutch car sold in America? Right. I mean, so you're talking 4-wheel drive DSG 3.2 VR6. That's a pretty good combo
It's
of
technically
stuff.
nifty, but
Right.
maybe not a joyful,
They're
laughing driving
No,
experience.
it's very Audi. It's very somber.
And if it was a car that competed with a Boxster or
just
even a Z3,
no contest.
it's like,
Yeah,
it
no
doesn't
contest.
pencil. And that's why he didn't drive
Yeah.
it. Although I was a bit insulted that he didn't drive the
the
R129 because...
That's a car that every time I get behind the wheel of one, I'm like, oh, I want one again.
But also, they are persistently valueless.
Yeah, they
It's
made
a
too
bull
many of
market thing. They're going to go up in value, and they just fucking won't. They're always $7,000 cars. They've been
Good.
$7,000 car. No, because they end up in the hands of people who are like, ooh, $1,000 for an ignition service? Yee, I don't think I can do that. And then they all just... Well, there's two paths for those cars. They return to the earth, or they stay in the garage of the original owner until they die, and then they get sold to someone for $7,000 with 29,000 miles, so that then they can then return to the earth after that.
Rag the shit out of it.
And that's a shame. Our 107s have come out of that finally because they're now worth $25,000 instead of $2,500. Mm-hmm. We've been talking about forever how 129 should be worth more. They keep not doing it. I will persistently enjoy them.
They will continue to not do it until such time that the supply of them dwindles below the demand. I mean,
guess,
it's just
yeah. I mean, 107s have for some reason do that because they look vintage, and it's a very vintage looking experience. The 129, I guess, looks so contemporary that nobody wants to. And it's not vintagey enough, but
I'm sorry. I think that car I agree with you. Has to become worth more money. I don't want them to be $1 million cars. They're never going to
be $1 million cars, but it would be nice if they were $19,000. I mean,
they are.
To be fair,
nice
late ones are.
Right.
I really prefer the early cars personally, and I'm in the minority for that. And so for me, it's actually
not in this
wonderful.
room. Not in this room.
Not in this room, but there are three people
they're
in
wrong.
this room.
So let's just correct this right now. The earlier cars are better.
Yes, although I prefer one without CIS.
Okay, so we've decided that there were two facelifts, right,
yes.
on R129s.
One in 96 and one in 99.
Okay, neither of them made the car look better.
Agree.
The original
but
engine...
a lot of people don't agree.
They're wrong.
Yes, they are.
Because here's the thing. On the outside, sure, and okay, a couple vents here, a couple taillights here and there. Fine.
I'm strongly against the facelift aesthetically outside.
I'm not strongly against it. I prefer the early ones, but the inside, there is no contest.
Yes.
That original steering wheel, the original climate controls, the
center stack, the door panel design, the seat design.
Exquisite. And it became trashy with those weird ass steering wheels
and
blobby. The ugly seats.
They just did a blobby thing that Mercedes was doing. Everything went blobby at Mercedes in the late 90s.
Everything ever. Remember the 1996 Taurus.
Everything was going blobby, and that car succumbed to it. And it's a wart on an otherwise sensational. I think it's one of the finest Mercedes-Benz cars ever made,
without question. But the one to get is not the earliest. So the one to get is a 500.
If you're getting a 500,
having previously owned a 300 stick shift, I can say this: the one to get is definitely not a 600 and definitely not a 300. It's a 500. First couple years were CIS. That was
until 92 was the last year of CIS.
Right. So 93, those were 4-cam V8s with 4-valve per cylinder and variable valve timing with CIS, which is nuts. They got real fuel injection in 93. What happened in 94? Did 94 get a 5-speed?
No. The 5-speed came out in 96. In 94, there are cosmetic differences only. They went from 500 SL to SL 500. They got rid of the perforated door panels, and they went to... No, they didn't. That was in 95. They went to clear front lenses in 95. 94 and 95 are identical except for the front turn signal lenses.
And then 96 was the
facelift.
Which went to the 3-valve engine.
No,
that was 98.
98 was the last year of the
M119.
God, nobody cares. We've gone on a very deep...
The point is you get a
93, 94, 95, 500, which is exactly what I have.
They are fucking monsters.
Yeah.
They are so... God, Paolo, stop giving us the Rona. They are monsters. They're so fast. They're so well engineered. They're so good. That is my bull market pick for the year. I'm done here.
Every year for the last 5 years, they never go up in value.
Why only 5?
Whenever. Yes, you're right. But they're sensational cars.
Hold on. I just realized I forgot something. Stay right there. Don't talk amongst yourself.
What? Are we going to talk about the remaining... What is he doing? Oh, he's forgot his balls.
What?
You did this entire episode without your balls?
Yeah, my balls are fine. It's enormous. This thing weighs a ton.
Wow. And for those who are listening, which we learned, 2/3 of our consumers of this podcast only listen, so they still think we're talking about Jason's balls. We're only talking about one of them, though. One of Jason's balls. It's very heavy.
Especially given its size. It's amazing. Hold on, look at that. Do you see the reflection in this? This is the crystal ball that we used for that theme and that scene, and I have to give Randy Pope's credit. I wrote this stupid ass scene about I wish I had a crystal ball, and he made it really funny. But I think it's pretty cool how it distorts
it's upside down.
Right? So if you hold it this way, can you read it now?
Yes.
I didn't know you could actually go on Amazon.com and buy a crystal ball.
Is that actually crystal? Is it verifiable crystal? It looks like glass. It could be glass.
How do you tell? You're supposed
I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't know what that means. But either way, this was supposed to be a prop in this episode because Randy's, I see. So everyone.
Oh, yes. So the Excel spreadsheet one was pretty self-explanatory.
Okay, so at the beginning of the episode, if you haven't seen it, which you should go and see it, blah, 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 blah. The lines were Randy was looking in his crystal ball, seeing sort of
the future, something, a
He
vision.
was seeing a vision that was not a literal interpretation of what I was saying, but it was also sort of supposed to be a little bit funny. And so he starts, I'm talking about, valuation. And I think, how do I get him to lead into us talking about the valuation team? And all they do is crunch numbers. Mm-hmm. And so he sees
a
Hyundai XL
spread, which is Nutella.
It was Nutella
being on toast.
Yep.
And then it's someone making their bed with a flat sheet.
Right. So
an Excel spreadsheet.
Exactly. And then the next one was, I was thinking of like, okay, how do we describe what defines a bull market car? Right. And so these are, poised to take off. I thought, they're perfect. This is, suck, squish, bang, boom, right? So
internal
combustion engine, right? So the cylinder pistons compress the mixture and the fuel's already been injected and we're about to light it off. And so we did inserts in the crystal ball of suck, squish, squeeze. I always say squish. Suck, squeeze, bang, and blow. And so it was Mr. Bean blowing out a candle.
Illicit.
Well, the suck was a little,
the sort of implication of Monica Lewinsky.
That's not fair. It's too soon.
Too soon. It's been 25 years.
It's still too soon.
Now that it's 2023, it has been 25 years.
She is amazing. Did you see the interview with her and John Oliver?
No.
I have to confess, I made Monica Lewinsky jokes for years after that. Like, we all did. Mm-hmm. And never really stopped to think about there was a human being in that body. And what the hell that she went through that we all put her through. But let me tell you, if you want a great laugh and feel terrible about what a fucking horrible human being you are, go watch John Oliver's interview with her, because she's, in fact, indisputably the coolest person to ever walk the face of the fucking planet.
Okay.
So you can take your blue dress joke and suck it.
Invest it in the... Okay.
You have to
We've
go.
in large part covered the bull market. It was interesting to see the parallels between both sides of the Atlantic. The Lamborghini pairings. I mean, they chose Diablo instead of Murcielago, but I think both of those cars are... It makes sense for how impactful and iconic those cars are and for how they cost, not that much money compared to Countach's or Miura's.
Fair enough.
What other parallels?
He tries, ladies and gentlemen, he tries to be fair. No, it's not that much money compared to a skyscraper in Manhattan.
Yes, a penthouse apartment. The Saab one was also an interesting parallel. But then also, obviously, some pretty stark divergences.
AMX versus
Austin
Fiesta
7.
Mark 1. Yeah, well, yeah.
Yes.
But we had the Harley Davidson. That was our 1930s car. That was closest
to the Austin 7.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see how these perform in the future. I mean, we went back and looked at some of the ones from the past. Some of them are really bang on. Others, I think, are not so much. Like one of the years in the past, like Range Rover Classic, they described in for sure those cars have gone from being $5,000 or $7,000 to $20,000 or $50,000. Other times it doesn't do so well. XK120 was described as one, which those cars persistently are valueless, especially for how cool they are. But I get it because it's just an old drum brake carbureted 1950s car that doesn't mean anything to anybody who's less than 400 years old. So, I mean, I never understood why those cars might be poised to go up. Cool as they are.
This is the thing. I have no insight into the valuation.
Especially because Jaguar is a dead mark, as we've discussed in the past.
Dead brand walking. God, my boss came up with that one. It's such a good title. And I'm I'm going to get crucified by this. Here's the thing. The reason why I did the whole silly crystal ball thing is because the reality is even the valuation folks don't have a crystal ball. And so they're not going to get it all right. And I am loath to give investment advice. You're not going to have me tell you where to put your money and what to do. But I do
if it
love
relates to cars or anywhere else.
Anywhere else.
That's
Certainly
fair.
anywhere else. I'd be more likely to give you financial advice on cars. But my first piece of financial advice on cars is don't buy a car as an investment. Buy a car because you love it. And if you get to drive it, if let's say you buy something that's $25,000 and over the course of 3 years, it costs you all of that plus $1,000 in fees, right? $21,000 in 3 years is what? $600 a month. That's the same as a depreciating Civic at this point. What's $600 a month on a lease?
Oh, you're saying even if you
right.
sell it for nothing,
right? If you walk away, worst case, you've had 3 years of enjoyment of something. So your chances are you're not going to walk away from a valueless car at the end of 3 years. Hopefully,
no, it'll probably be worth at least what you paid for it.
That's the goal, right? And so the point there is, it doesn't really matter. These are cars that are we've as a company in sort of identified as likely to do well relative to the rest of the market. We don't know where the market's going, right? We could have a huge classic car market crash next year. But the bigger point is each one of these cars is special in and of itself. Whether you and I like an SLR McLaren, it's still a special car.
Yes.
And so the advice there for bull market is really just go and enjoy this collector.
The other thing
hobby.
I think to say also about that is that if it's a car that you enjoy, chances are someone else will enjoy it, and there's a reasonable chance that therefore its value could go up because a lot of other people will be like, this is cool and I would like to experience this. And so, plenty of people are printing money with buying whatever it is that they bought that was valueless, and that's all fine, and you can make money doing this, but ultimately for me, and I think for most people, they should be buying cars on the basis of what they enjoy, and just hopefully you buy a decent one that doesn't always broken like my Citroen.
And this is where we put on the thing fini or fin, because it's over.
Okay.
Until
next week.
And is it next week already?
I think so.
Welcome to the next episode of the Carmudgeon
Oh God, no! Oh my God.
Okay, this was episode number
80.
80. We've made it to 80.
We're approaching my age. Of the Carmudgeon Show, part of the podcast network. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Part of the what podcast network?
Hagerty Podcast Network.
Don't forget to subscribe and like.